Hello.
Hello, Harold. Harold Bratcher. This is Thomas Keegan with LibertarianProgressive.com. How's it going tonight?
It's going. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. And again, people, we're interviewing Harold Bratcher for Congress. You can find out more information at bratcher4congress.com. That's BRATCHERFOR Congress.com. He's running for the U.S. House of Representatives in Kentucky in the 3rd District.
Yes, I'm going against a 5-term incumbent. His name's John Yarmouth. He's trying to get elected to a 6th term. We're trying to put up the fight. Running a grassroots campaign, trying to put up the best fight we can with the resources that we have.
All right, well, that sounds exciting. And actually, before we get to your issues, if I may ask you, have you been in any debates? Are there any debates coming up?
We had a forum a couple months back, and that's the only thing that we've had. There's no debate scheduled. We reached out trying to set up a debate, and really, I don't guess anybody was interested in it. And normally the public broadcast station KET holds debates with candidates every year, but for some reason this year they're only interested in 2 races, and our race wasn't one of them.
That's very interesting. Thinking about what serves the public best and having the most information to make an educated and informed decision, I wonder if who that really benefits. Maybe that's part of the power of being an incumbent. If you were an incumbent in 2 years from now, and if you had a challenger, would you be willing to debate them, Harold?
Yes, I would. I think that's part of the political process, and that's one way that a candidate or an opponent can get his or her message out to the people.
Even if it might hurt your chances, you would still be willing to do that, right?
It's part of the process.
Excellent.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if you're doing your job, it doesn't matter what kind of debate that you're in, it'll show.
Yeah, it reminds me of that question that we might have heard as kids. It's not whether you win or lose, but how you play the game. And
Exactly.
Exactly. And if you have a good game, you're going to end up being a winner anyway. So your issues here, you have listed the economy, tax reform, term limits, Second Amendment, tort reform, refugees, border control, amnesty. If you don't mind, I just want to jump to term limits regarding the 5-term incumbent that you're running against. Could you say a word about term limits, since that's part of your platform?
Yes. I support term limits very strongly. I think by having term limits, what you do is you open the political process up to have more people being involved and not keeping it the quote-unquote good old boy, club. And what you get with term limits, you get fresh people with fresh ideals. What happens when people stay, in politics too long, they get complacent. And when they get complacent, they're not doing their job. A lot of politicians kind of forget after they've been in office, a term or two, who really put them there, who they really work for. You're considered a public servant. That's what a politician is. But I don't think most politicians understand that they are to serve the people. Most politicians, and this is one of the reasons why I decided to run, was because I'm tired of the way the politicians do these days, and they're more concerned about their own agendas than, the agenda of the people. We need to get back to a government that, like our forefathers said, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And with term limits, we would get that.
Right. All right. And people can also, even if it's not law, they can create term limits by going to the ballot this November 8th if they want to.
Yes, they can.
Now, what about, we're going to combine these 2 issues, or if you don't mind, the economy and tax reform. If you wouldn't mind explaining your approach to the economy, the state of the economy, and tax reform.
Well, the state of the economy is actually really bad. I know the government likes to put out reports that says, our economy is actually growing. I don't see it. As a constituent, I don't see where our economy has grown. And, NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, is all over the presidential election these days. I've been talking about NAFTA for over 20 years. That piece of legislation has killed more jobs in this country in the last 20 years than probably any single piece of legislation in our lifetime. It has cost this country over 1 million jobs, depending on which reports that you read, and it's cost an estimatedly 25% of our manufacturing sector of this country. You read every day, and it's gone on through this election, you see companies daily are looking to leave this country. When they leave this country, how do we replace that job? There's no companies moving here, so when they leave, all it's doing is driving our unemployment up. There's reports saying the national unemployment's around 5%. Is it really 5%? I mean, that's just the people that's on unemployment. What about the people that has exhausted their unemployment resources and no longer can apply for unemployment? So, what's really the unemployment numbers? I really think it's somewhere north of 20%. And then you got to look at the people that that don't work, that are on on the welfare or entitlement system. They're not working, so I would still consider them as unemployed. We have a program that helps people, that don't have a job, in our system, and that's great. We need that. A lot of people take advantage of it because they need it, and but they're still unemployed. And as long as we allow companies every day to leave this country, our unemployment's always going to go up. Our wages are always going to be stagnant. When employers can choose from 100 people to hire one person, wages are down. When employers have to beg people to come to work, wages go up. And that's what's happened with our trade agreement. And that's why I'm in the import-export business. I own a small transportation company here in Louisville, Kentucky. And we haul, our primary business is we do intermodal containers off the rail yards. And that, that's all the freight coming in or the freight leaving this country. And about 70%, minimum 70% of what we do is containers, product coming into this country. About 20% of what we do leaves the country, and about another 5 to 10% is what we call domestic freight, which may hop on a train in Louisville but deliver in California or deliver in New York or wherever. It's just riding a train instead of being on the highway. And when you got 70% or better of your product coming into this country, and you only got maybe about 20% leaving, and I'm being generous at a 20% number, that right there's your jobs. You have to, you cannot let your companies leave without replacing the job.
Yeah, so I guess you would be against the TPP. Is that fair to say? Okay.
Yes. I mean, there's no trade agreement that I've ever seen that really benefited the American people or the people of this country. It usually benefits other countries more than it does our own. And, I understand corporations are looking for a way for their bottom line. It's all about the bottom line at the end of the day, and that's what they're doing. Well, I come from an approach like cut some of the government red tape. So, let's cut some of the red tape. Let's lower the taxes across the board for everybody. I don't care if you're low income, middle income, if you're wealthy, your corporate taxes. Let's cut taxes across the board. What happens when you cut taxes? People have more money in their pocket to spend. It's the money you earned. You earned it. Why did we have to give it all to the government? So if we cut taxes, put more money in our pocket, we're going to spend money. We're a nation of spenders. We're not a nation of savers. I mean, we're a nation of debtors, actually. We probably have the highest national debt of any country. Our country's $20 trillion in debt. I mean, I don't hear any other country talking about how big their debt is, but I mean, we're in some serious debt because that's just the way we are. We're all about we if you make $1, you spend $2. That's just the way the American people work. And
what about getting out of debt? Because you have to reduce spending or raise taxes, right?
Well, yes, and what I would look at first before we raise taxes is I would look at to cut government spending. I'm not talking about cutting programs. What you have to do, in my opinion, you need to freeze all government spending. And what I'm talking about is at the political level. I'm not talking about freezing Social Security. I'm not talking about freezing any benefits of anything. I'm not talking about, at the very point, I'm not talking about cutting any programs. I'm talking about freezing what the politicians spend, government spending at that level. Then tell the politicians you have to come together and work together to balance a budget. And then once you balance the budget, you can start looking at what programs are viable, what programs are not, where you need to put more money into a program, and where you can take money out of a program. We spend money all over the world, which, I have no problem with helping other countries out around the world. But we got to rein in some of the spending and take care of what's going on in our country before we push it all around the world.
And do you know if your opponent supports the trade deals?
I'm not really 100% sure. Like I said, one time when we were together, I'm not really for sure if he was totally against TPP or not. I really don't know. I don't want to answer that because I don't want to say.
Okay, that's fair enough. But you're definitely against it. Yeah.
I'm definitely against it. I think he's against it, but to what measure, I don't know.
Now, what about the Second Amendment? What's your stance on the Second Amendment, gun rights, right to bear arms, etc.?
I support the Second Amendment. I'm a constitutional conservative. If it's not broke, don't fix it. I think the reason our country has never really been attacked on our shores other than probably Pearl Harbor is because we have the world's largest army with private citizens being gun owners. If we were to get rid of our guns, I would fear for our country's safety. And, but I do think we do have background checks to own a gun. You have to go through a federal background check. But I do not have a problem making the background check a little more stringent, making it a little harder. Because, if you go to do a background check, usually you can find out your answer in 5-10 minutes. Is that really an extensive background check? I doubt it. But I do think we need to watch who we sell our weapons or who is able to buy weapons. And I don't think gun owners is the problem. Law-abiding citizens aren't out committing crimes with guns. It's the criminals. We need to learn how to take it out of the criminals' hands. I don't know how to do that per se. I don't have the exact answer on that part, but I can tell you that private citizens that are law-abiding should have the right to bear arms if they choose to.
Sure, and a lot of the issues are, should 99.9% of people have extra regulations or burdens based on what a small percentage do,
right.
Maybe if they're efficient. Now, what about the terrorist watch list? Having people not be able to get guns with that. What about the issues of due process regarding that as well?
Great question. I'll tell you this. Here you go. This was a question that was brought up with my opponent. Okay, you cannot tell people that's on the no-fly list that they can't buy a gun. Now, this is why. Okay, because you never know how you got put on there, and you don't know how to get off of it. Now, as soon as they give you due process to where if you go up there and try to buy a firearm and they say, hey, sir, I'm sorry, or ma'am, I'm sorry, you're on the no-fly list, you can't buy a firearm, okay, then you should be able to call a number, do something to get your name taken off of it. But you can't do that. No one can tell you how to get on or off of it. So until they can have a due process, I'm against that. That's the only reason why I'm against that, is because there's no due process.
Right. And should there be, even regardless of the gun issue, should there be some due process regarding the no-fly list in the first place?
Yes, there should. You should, any time that you are put on anything, you should have the right to be able to have the due process to get your name taken off of it. You should not be, how can you do that to people? You can't sit there and tell people, well, you're on this list. Well, don't know how you got on it. Don't know how you're getting off of it. Good luck. Have a good day. That's not the American way. You
could be part of the Tea Party. Your name might be something like someone else's name. So
right.
We've heard stories. Ted Kennedy, I think, was on some kind of list at one point. The
right.
Democrat senator from Massachusetts and some other people. What about now? You do have an issue here about border control, amnesty. You say here, children born in the U.S. Should be able to have the right to be citizens, but their parents not. Could you go into that a little bit, sir?
Well, what I'm saying, what I mean by that is, just because you have a child born in this country shouldn't automatically make your parents citizens, especially if they were here illegally. I'm not against people coming to this country legally. All of our ancestors come to this country. There's the only American out there is an American Indian or an Eskimo from Alaska, when they became part of our union. But, so we've all come from other nations, and we've all come, the right way for the most part. But when people come to this country illegally, that's where, they're breaking the law set up by our government. So you have to follow the law. And if they have a child in this country, then, I don't really have a problem with the child being an American because they were born in America. But the parents shouldn't get a pathway to citizenship because their child was born here, especially if they come here illegally. If they were here legally on a visa or something, maybe grant them some special citizenship privileges because they were here, the right way, whether it be on a work visa, student visa, and they, end up having a child. You want your child to grow up in the best country in the world. More people come to America every day than leave. I don't see other countries having the amount of people crossing their borders every day to get into that country like they do in the United States.
All right, and let me ask you about because Rand Paul is a senator there, and not to
very good guy.
Very
good guy.
He's been in the news a little bit, and so has Kentucky, I think, in regards to legislation concerning industrial hemp. So if you could address that issue as well as the war on drugs, because we're seeing states like Colorado, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, I think California is having it on the ballot soon. Should the federal government prevent these states from being able to choose their destiny in regards to that? And what do you say about industrial hemp as well?
Okay. I'll break this down for you. States should be allowed to run their state as long as they're not breaking any laws. And what I mean by that is no discriminatory laws or anything that could cross state lines. It's like if you get a marriage license in Kentucky, you're married in every state in the union. Okay? That's a federal government law. Okay? They make states honor it. But other than laws like that, or like if you have a driver's license, you're allowed to drive in any state in the United States, no matter which state your driver's license is from, as long as it's in good standing. That's what the federal government should be there to do, is when it encompasses all states, okay? But if a state wants to, grow industrial hemp, that should be the state's right to do that. Industrial hemp is a product that is used in manufacturing. They make, clothing out of it, cosmetics out of it, lotion out of it. They make a lot of products out of it. Now, I'm from a farming state, the state of Kentucky, okay? I am for the growth of industrial hemp. I think that, Kentucky used to be one of the biggest producers in tobacco, And now the war on tobacco is, took effect over the last 20 years, and there's not much tobacco grown in Kentucky anymore. Heck, there's not much tobacco grown in the United States anymore. A lot of it is, grown outside this country. But I would be for today, if we had it on the ballot today, that Kentucky can grow industrial hemp, I would check yes. I think it's a viable crop for the state of Kentucky. Now, as far as the marijuana aspect of it, that's a total different issue. But we're talking about industrial hemp, and I am for industrial hemp. Not only for Kentucky being able to grow it, any state that wants to grow it,
sure,
if they're growing it for the right reasons, I would support that.
Do you think, in other words, should the DEA stay out of Colorado, Washington, Oregon, any other state that chooses to legalize fully marijuana?
Yes, that is okay. Now you're going to walk a fine line with that. Okay, I do agree if Colorado, California, and the other states that want to have medical marijuana, that's their choice. Their legislators voted yes. The people, or their legislative body voted for it. The citizens of that state voted for it. So yes, that the DEA should stay out of it. Okay, but now here's the problem that you may run into. It may be legal to do it a certain way, but how do we police it for the people doing it still illegally? So how do we balance that? So we can't tell the DEA to stay out of our state for this, then who's going to police the illegal drug trade, even when it comes down to marijuana in that state? You kind of got to walk a fine line there.
Yeah. Now, overall, do you think it should be more of a health issue, or there are a lot of people that are arrested every year, and it's a long time war that started back in the Nixon administration. The war on drugs, it's been going on for about 40 years.
Mm-hmm. Here's the problem with drugs. This is why I want border control. I'm not necessarily trying to keep people out of the country. I'm trying to keep contraband from coming into the country. That's why I'm for border control, and that's why I support it. It's not necessarily the people I'm concerned about. It's what I'm concerned about is what they're bringing into this country. Now, there has been significant gain in the usage of medical marijuana that is, from some of the stuff that I have read, has helped a lot of people get off more addictive drugs and, that more prescribed drugs. I've seen studies where they say, medical marijuana will help take you off Prozac, Xanax, and all these other drugs. And that's great. If you can, if that can help you that greatly, then that's great. But, we still have a war on the heroin, the crack, the cocaine. How do we fight that? So you got to kind of watch it. What I would like to see in the medical marijuana front is maybe going to a pill form for medical marijuana, and because when you inhale toxins into your body, it's going to hurt you in other ways. It may help you, but it's still going to hurt you. And I would like to see it go to more of a pill form.
Okay, and just two more issues regarding our foreign policy and our military. Do you think there could be any cuts in the military while still having the strongest military? Thinking about our military in Western Europe, also in South Korea, defending Saudi Arabia, part of NATO, things like that.
Well, we cannot afford to cut any budgets in the military. Any budget that comes down to the safety of our soldiers, our men and women that's fighting for this country freely, that have signed up freely because it's free to join the military. It's your choice. We're not forced. We had a draft back in the 60s and early 70s. during Vietnam, but we haven't seen a draft before then. We always have to protect our soldiers at all costs. They need to have the best equipment, the best ammunition, the best firearms to protect us within our country and with outside of our borders. And, you know, our military levels are at the lowest decades, and we can't allow that to happen. Now, there is some spending cuts that we could probably make in the military, and not really cut the money, but not spend it in this area and you know, move that money over to another area that would be better useful. You know, I saw an article that they were building these new battleships, and the Navy didn't even want them. You know, they didn't really, you know, they didn't want them. So why are they shoving them down the Navy? Why are they forcing them onto the Navy if the commanders and the generals in the Navy do not even want the battleship? So why spend billions of dollars there when you can give them billions of dollars in other areas and departments where they see fit? What we need to do when it comes to military spending, we need to listen to our generals, our admirals, and you know, our military, and they need to tell us where the money needs to be spent. I don't know what they need. They need to tell me. Do you need it in armor-plated vests? Do you need it in ammunition? Do you need it in weapons? Do you need armor-plated Humvees? What do you need? You need to tell us. And then Congress and the Senate, they need to listen to the military and go by what the military says they need. A politician sitting in Washington has no clue what the guy on the battlefield needs. The guy on the battlefield knows what he needs.
That might be the case. Now, what about auditing? Do you think the military, the Defense Department should be audited, as well as do you think the Federal Reserve should be audited?
Yes, all forms of government should always be audited. You know, I don't know if they should do it on a, you know, bi-yearly or, you know, every 5 years, or, you know, there has to be some kind of audit in place to make sure the money's going, the resources and the money's going to the right programs and buying the proper assets that they need, and to make sure that we're just not throwing money unnecessarily, say, you know, out the window, and where we could be better utilizing that money somewhere else. There's nothing wrong with auditing any form of government, just like your businesses, people that own businesses have outside third-party companies come in all the time and audit them to make sure that the money's where it's supposed to be. Why can't we do that in government?
Right. There can be a healthy debate regarding what should be spent, but first we need an audit or a general overview of exactly where everything is. Let me ask you this in closing here, Harold. We appreciate your time today. Who's some of your favorite people, past or present?
I tell you this, Ronald Reagan, he, in my opinion, is probably one of the best presidents. I liked Ronald Reagan that he stood up to the world and he said, this is the way it is. He, you know, brought down he stopped the Cold War with Russia. He brought down the wall because he was a man that stood up and said it the way it was. He done a lot of great things as president, and he done some things that, you know, I'm not happy about. But overall, as a politician, he's one of the reasons why I'm a conservative today. It's because of Ronald Reagan.
All right. Any upcoming events, Harold? Any final words of wisdom? And we appreciate your time again to let our audience know of some of the options that are going to be in Kentucky. And if you're interested in U.S. politics, you know, this can be a very interesting race. And let us know also if you do end up, if your opponent does end up deciding to debate you, that'd be really interesting, and we'll put a link to it here. But I guess there's just 30 days where that opportunity runs out, actually.
Right. Yeah. You know, if he would like to debate, we're open to that, and you know, we would we're ready. And, I'd like to tell your listeners, look, I'm not a politician. Everybody talks about every year. It's all I've ever heard is we need, people that's not politicians, going to Washington or going to our state, governments, local governments. I'm not a politician. I'm a small businessman. I'm a family man. I'm sick and tired of the politicians in this country thinking they can do whatever they want and then telling the American people they can't do what they're allowed to do. The politicians, they think they're above the law, and they're not. And they need to get back to being public servants because that's what they are. They need to remember who put them in office and govern by the way the people ask them to govern. That's one of the reasons. That's another reason I'm running. My representative, I felt like, hasn't been listening to me or the people in this district, and it's a time for change. The only thing change can do is bring hope for something better. And I tell people all the time, if you're unhappy with your political situation in your state, local, or federal government, get out and vote. And and this year, get out and vote on November the 8th. Whether you vote for me or my opponent, I encourage everyone that's listening to get out and vote.
And we've been talking with Harold Bratcher, and you can find more information at bratcher4congress.com, BRATCHERFOR Congress.com. Harold, good to talk with you today, and thanks for helping enlighten our audience for some of the choices and what's going on in American politics today. There's a lot more going on than just the presidential election. We have Congress that's going to be on the ballot as well. So good to talk to you today. I hope you have a fantastic evening, sir. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.